Hi, everyone. Sounds like I'm a lawyer, and I sounds like a very old business model because I'm the only one that charges money for whatever it is we're selling. Anyway, it is my pleasure to see a lot of old friends, a lot of new friends, and introduce old friends and new friends. I'll start with Udi. Um, is that the right order, or am I going? It's the Hebrew. It's the bottom up. Udi is a CEO, co-founder of a company called Redkicks and a chief Metallica officer. He'll tell you all about it. Udi told me to say that he started a company, built a company, didn't run it into the ground, sold the company, and then became a chief product officer, something. Jive software, and while Jive went public, so he went through that process with the company. Prior to that, Udi, what are we doing? He worked at Microsoft. There was a long thing. Our guest speaker is David Marcus. Nice to meet you. David is a vice president of messaging product. Let me try not to butcher everything. At Facebook, responsible for Messenger, which is used by hundreds of millions of people around the world daily. So watch what you're texting tonight. He'll know. David joined Facebook. You don't know? Nice! That's awesome! We learned something. David joined Facebook in 2014 from PayPal. Prior to that, for 2 years, he was the president of PayPal, and prior to that, vice president of mobile, leading its mobile products and business. A lifelong entrepreneur, David launched his first 2 companies in Europe, the first at the age of 23. David moved to Silicon Valley in 2008, where he founded a mobile payments company called Zong, that was acquired by PayPal in 2011. David was born in France, grew up in Paris and Geneva, and he taught himself to write computer code at age 8. As a mother to an 8-year-old boy, I'm feeling a little behind. David attended University of Geneva for a year before dropping out to start his first company. It's a pleasure to welcome you both. Thank you. And oh, you have a mic.
No? Yes? Yes.
Okay. All right, awesome. So how does it feel to be an immigrant these days?
That's an awesome. Yes, right.
I probably did something really amazing in this world to be able to sit here and interview someone I've known for 2.5 years. Is a really special person. I'm not going to belabor this and talk about this, but really one of the in Hebrew, we would say gever gever, because it's true. So I'm honored to be here, David. I have only 3 pages of questions for you. But the first question I wanted to ask, so you went through the cycle. You started as an entrepreneur, successful, and then you became a big shot executive in big company, president of PayPal, wow. And then you leave to go to Facebook in something that sounded dramatic. So tell us a little bit about that move.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, it did sound unusual when I made that decision. I think it's less unusual now, 2 years in. The thing is, actually, when you run a company, and when I left PayPal, I think it was about 15,000 employees. When you run a company of 15,000 employees, that's almost a public company. It went public, actually, following that, and I knew it was going to happen. It's not fun every day. And especially when you're an entrepreneur and you like to build products and stuff, like, you spend 90% of your time fixing issues and rewiring the culture and the platform and all these things, and 10% of your time actually working on creative things. And the interesting thing is the balance between the stuff that you do in your life that's draining your energy and the stuff in your life that's actually creating energy. And I felt that I was fairly unbalanced after 2.5 years leading that company. And I think we did really good work. And when I took over PayPal, I think developers and small businesses really hated us. And we had a really crappy platform, and we turned those three things around, I think. And it was a good period of time, but it was like, the balance was draining. So I was starting to think about doing something else. And of course, the first thing that came to mind was going back to building something, because that's what I did all of my life.
Startup land.
Yeah. And that's when Mark pinged me and invited me over for dinner, and we had a conversation about like everything and nothing, and then suddenly he's like, oh, messaging is going to be kind of a big deal, and it's going to be one of the most important things for us, and we would like you to come in, or I would like you to come and lead that for us. And at that time I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that, but I'm just going to commit that I'll think about it, but don't have high hopes because I don't feel like doing it. And so we had that dinner, and then Mark was really super passionate about the space, had a really big vision for what he wanted to do in the next decade or so, and he was really passionate about it. And a good anecdote, since we're off the record, was that at some point after I was driving back home from PayPal, and I would stop at his house for drinks and stuff, and one night I was like, okay, Mark, like, don't email me, don't call me, don't do anything for like 2 weeks. I'll think about it, and then I come back. And I left his house. It was like 7:30 p.m. or so, and he said yes, like sure, and I left his house. Do you have like the handheld? I'll just take the handheld. It's fine. And by 11 p.m. I get a text from Cheryl, breakfast tomorrow morning.
He's
So
a
like,
man of his word.
No, but I'm like, he didn't reach out.
I know. He's a man of his word.
Right. And so I'm like, okay, this is a winning team. Like, there's passion for this thing, and and I'm going to go do this. And it's been amazing since then. It's just been an amazing ride.
How is Facebook like, especially from the executive level point of view?
Well, a couple
how
of
different
things.
is it from PayPal, where I know you had a ton of fun 100% of the time, but no, but how different and unique is it?
Well, the thing is, at PayPal, I spent a lot of time trying to make it what it used to be, which was a technology company. For a long time, it was led by a lot of people from the financial services industry. And it wasn't a technology company anymore. And Facebook is definitely a technology company. I mean, there's no arguing with that. And the one thing that's very underrated at Facebook and not very well appreciated, actually, is the infrastructure we have. It's a dream for someone who likes to build products. We have an infrastructure that enables us, Messenger now has over 1 billion monthly active users. And every week, we ship a new version of our iOS and Android apps to 1 billion users in all of the languages. And we do that with like the ability to modify all kinds of experiences, to run multivariate tests. It's a dream, like, the ability to ship at that scale. And in the last 2 years, we've added 700 million monthly active users. So it's like a scale thing, and the ability to build things really quickly and to experiment things. And you have an idea on a Sunday, and 3 weeks later, 300 million people use it that day, or something, and so that's pretty cool.
It's a lot of people. I try to think in my head. I think 1 billion is like 1,000 million, which is like exactly that. It's so. Sorry. The wine. Working with Mark Zuckerberg, I'm sure people would love to hear some juicy stories. How is it? How unique is he? I mean, he's young, but still, every time I see him on video, he's like, he blows my mind away. You work with him, I'm assuming, very frequently. How?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple of things. I think, he's very unique in a number of ways. The first thing is that, Mark, if you look at companies, there are companies that are founder-led, and then there are the others. And what's really interesting is when you have a founder-led company, you optimize for the lifetime of the company and then beyond, right? Beyond your own lifetime. If you're a corporate exec, you optimize traditionally, you optimize for your tenure at the company. And that leads to very different choices. So A, we have a founder-led company with a visionary, brilliant founder. And two, Mark has this unbelievable ability to actually execute really, really well in the short to medium term, like really well. And at the same time has a vision for the very long term as well. And that's a pretty rare combination of two skill sets in one person. And so he's really impressive. And he's a great guy, too, honestly. He really is.
Very cool. Okay, let's talk about messaging. I think you know a thing or two about that space. So when I think about messaging, you know, the country that has taken it to the extreme is definitely China. I've seen in a couple of occasions how they use messaging, and it's like that's internet for them. That's everything. They order food, they order taxis, they transact in banks. Like everything is messaging. And I was wondering, is this how the future is going to look like for us in other areas of the world, like the US or Europe? Is there something unique about that area of the world?
Yeah.
What's...
Yeah. So, all right, so China. China is very different in a number of ways, but like in the messaging world, the main differences is that basically in China, people connect to the internet for the first time on mobile, not on a desktop. And at the time WeChat really developed, you didn't have ways to buy things online, to do your banking, to pay each other, to do all of these things. And so as a result, because they had such a very high engagement on WeChat for just messaging, they built a whole ecosystem that looks more actually like Yahoo in the good old days, like, you know, a portal to mobile web experiences, but with a layer of identity and transactional capabilities. So I think that if we were to try to just copy what they did here, it wouldn't work because we already have apps and we already have access to Amazon and we already have access to all of these great services on apps. And so for us, at the very least, it shows what the potential of a fully integrated messaging app looks like. But our approach is very, very different. So for instance, we don't get away from this concept of threads. So we believe that threads are really important, the conversation, because it contains the whole history of your relationships with a potential business or a service or, you know, whatever it is. Since threads in Messenger and messaging, mobile messaging, are canonical, unlike emails, it offers a lot of value. So you can drop in UI and all kinds of different things, but all of your past interactions with a single business are actually going to be inside of that thread. And so we take a very different approach where we feel that we have a unique opportunity between mobile web and apps. So mobile web still sucks, basically, because every time you have an interaction with a company, you have to re-identify again. It loses context of all of your previous interactions, and you have to start all over again. It's slow. It's got all kinds of issues. And apps are, you know, hard. Like if you're not one of the top 5 apps in the world to get your app downloaded, and for people to use it every day, it's really hard. Like in the early days of apps, we were all downloading every single app, and we were saying yes to every permission. One push notification? Sure. Location? Yeah, sure. Everything. And now we don't download apps, and when we do, it's no, no, no. So you have no push notifications at the very least, so it's very, very hard for brands to actually reach and companies to reach their customers. So we believe that we have a sweet spot there, and that's what we're building for.
So is bots the answer then? Because, as you know, maybe I'm also in this messaging space, and bots is like, is it real? Because I have to be very honest. I try bots and I'm like, it feels sometimes very forced. And how much pizza can I order? But sometimes it feels like it's just easier to open an app. And I'm thinking, is this us trying to mimic what is happening in China and trying to make messaging about everything versus using mobile the way we got used to use it? So I know bots is a big bet. And I want to hear about bots.
So a couple of things. First of all, generally what you read is never as good as it's depicted or never as bad as it's depicted, and that's true for bots. So I feel that like when we announced it at F8, which was April 6 months ago-ish, the hype was insane. Then it's the hype cycle, and then people realize, oh, like the reality doesn't really catch up to the hype, and so it goes the other way around, and then it stabilizes eventually, and then it grows at a healthy pace, and that's where we are now. I feel that like right now, if you look at business objectives for a lot of brands, we have, and I could go on for 2 hours giving you case studies and examples of brands that have built successful deployments on Messenger that are actually delivering the results that they want. So you have brands that are doing brand activation work that's working really, really well. So take the case of Absolute US, the vodka, that has been offering free drinks. And now you may stop me and saying, of course, if they offer free drinks, everyone's going to use it. But it's a really cool experience. So basically, they advertise in newsfeed, and they say, if you go to Messenger and talk to our virtual bartender, we'll give you a free drink. So now you do one thing, which is the unbelievable targeting capabilities of newsfeed that enables you to target the audience that you want, and you get an audience to a one-on-one conversation with identity. That in itself is a huge deal. Like if you're an advertiser in the room, you know what I'm talking about. The ability to go from a wide audience to a one-to-one conversation that can be automated or not is a huge deal. So they do that. They go through, you go as a user through a virtual bartender thing where they show you beautiful photos of cocktails that you might pick. You pick the cocktail you want, you say the city you're in, and they send you a code, you go to the bar nearby, you get your free drink, and then you get a notification to get a Lyft ride back home. And so that's pretty awesome because for them, what they've seen with that type of experience is they tried the same thing with mobile web, they tried the same thing with a very lightweight app, and they're seeing 3x the redemption rate. Which for a brand is crazy, right? So those types of things work well. And I could go on and on. Call of Duty launched that thing where they had an Easter egg in the game for the new game launch, and they got like 6 million people to interact with one of the characters of the game in 24 hours on Messenger, and that was a crazy brand activation thing, one of the biggest things they've ever done. So that's one category of things where you have a brand, and as a brand you want to activate, you want to drive more brand preference, you want to get direct with your consumers with, like, if you're a CPG company, that's a dream come true. Then we have customer service. So customer service on Messenger, I don't know if anyone here likes to call large companies, but I don't think anyone does. It ranks pretty high up on the list of things you never want to do. And that's not because the large companies don't want to serve you, it's just because it's hard to do it on the phone. First of all, the phone is like a very involved process. You need to be on the phone, and you can't do anything else. Like you can't put the phone down and go do something else, because for sure, the minute you put the phone down, the person is going to pick up the thing and they're going to hang up on you. And so it doesn't work. So customer service is a big use case. And opening up the platform in April enabled hundreds of middleware providers, from Zendesk to Salesforce to Lithium to Conversocial to Chatfuel, name it. We now have a vibrant ecosystem of third parties that enable brands to either do customer service or build great experiences. And so I feel that, I'm sorry, it's a long answer, but it's important. I feel that there's a disconnect between what people think. When we used the word bot, I was a little hesitant, right? Because bots carry this old terminal, really crappy interface of 15, 20 years ago. And what we're building is very different because it's got UI, it's got buttons, it's got images, it's got auto-playing videos, it's got all of those things. It's got payments, it's got identity. And so now, 6 months in, I'm actually pretty proud of some of the experiences that we have on the platform. We have 34,000 bots on the platform. And of course, the vast majority of them are actually not good. The first couple of apps. If you go back in time and look at the first couple of apps, the first 6 months of the App Store, they were really crappy apps. And if you look at the first websites after 6 months after the web opened, they were really crappy websites. And so the same applies here. It's just, it wasn't that great. It took time. But now I'm seeing really good business use cases being performing at a much higher clip than if you direct people to a mobile website or through the friction of downloading an app and authorizing all the permissions.
So,
all right.
They'll figure out the question from the answer. No, but when initially launched, bots were the demos that were given, the examples where I can order an airline ticket. It was very much positioned as, or some of the examples were very much app replacement. And I think that might be where the friction came along. People expected this to be better than an app.
I think that's fair. I think the ticket replacement actually is a really good example of actually a better experience inside of Messenger versus an app. And so if you look at KLM, and like there are a bunch more that have launched since then, but if you look at KLM, the experience is actually you go on the website, because traditionally you still book on websites, and you buy a ticket, and automatically, without you doing anything, because we always have an open session in the back end with Facebook, we send you your itinerary inside of a Messenger thread. And when it's time to check in, you get a bubble with a big button to get your boarding pass, and you just check in with one tap, and you get your boarding pass in Messenger. If there are gate changes, delays, whatever, you know it. And now, if you're stuck in traffic on the 101, you can send a message saying, hey, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm not going to make it. Put me on the next one. You don't need to say who you are, your name, the booking reference, the flight you're talking about. There's context, and they immediately put you on the next flight. And that's a much better experience than an app, because an app, you can't do that. You still have to call, and you still have to identify yourself or email or do all these things that are not instant. And it's a worse experience. So I feel that the magic is actually this notion of a hybrid experience where most of it is automated, but when you really need help, humans can jump in and help. And most of the companies, like Burberry, just launched a really cool experience this week, which combines almost all of the great elements of a really good bot experience. So they do they do brand storytelling that they do really well with animated GIFs that are personalized to your name and stuff like that. And try it out if you want, m.me/Burberry. And then it's a virtual assistant that helps you pick presents for your friends for the holidays or for your loved ones. And if you need help and you want to talk to someone, you can talk to a live person. So, you know, that's a really good example of a brand that now can have unparalleled relationships with its customers, and for customers to have a much better experience than they had before.
It's definitely an interesting, at least for me, it gave me some clarification, because I think it's very, at least in the Valley, you feel like it's all or nothing. I'm going to book a ticket now on Messenger. I'm going to start everything, book it, pick seats, you know, pay everything, and what you just described actually makes a lot more sense. It's not an all or nothing, but once you book, Messenger comes in, helps you, totally makes sense. So I know there are a lot of entrepreneurs, so I'm wondering, so the Messenger platform, if you had to guide, so you heard there are different types of apps and entrepreneurs here, is there like a best practice or guidance that you would give people here, that something that they could take home, that how to think about the platform, Messenger platform, in terms of integrate with it, to really leverage it? It's still relatively new, and you guys are learning as much as everybody else, so is there one?
Well, the first thing is, don't make the thing conversational if it doesn't need to be. So in other words, if you ask people to type a word or to tap a button that has that word inside of that button, they, like 99%, will choose to tap on that button, and 1% are ultra geeks. And no, it's true. It's like, so like you have the ability with the platform to actually build those things. Like, and gradually you've seen us updates. We're at the Messenger platform 1.3 now. So we had 3 major updates to the platform since April. We've added quick replies, we've added vertical native lists, we've added instant articles if you're a publisher, we've added like a bunch of different things to make the experiences feel more native and have more UI. And as a result, make sure that you can guide the types of responses that you get from users instead of letting them run free flow with conversational stuff. And AI is much better now, and you can tap into Bot Engine, which is a tool we offer, or any of the other tools out there. So AI is getting better from a natural language intent extraction standpoint, but from an actual conversational thing, AI still sucks. And we're not there, and we still have a lot of work to do. And so as a result, like if you guide people, and there are a bunch of companies that do that really well. So there's a company that's called Pullstring, Israeli founder also, who built like a bunch of different things and demos of their capability. And if you look at the way they did it in a way that guides the user through an experience and a journey that feels very natural and conversational, but actually if you look at the interactions, they're not conversational. And so that's the best form because it feels personal, it feels great, but at the same time you don't get off the rails. The other thing I'd say is that if you want to build a more emotional connection is to actually create a personality. So what we've seen is, and I think the best company from that standpoint, apart from that example of Pullstring, is Meetic in France. So Meetic in France is part of the Match.com group, and it's the biggest dating company in France. And they built a whole-on dating experience inside of Messenger in France. And the way they did it is they actually have two characters, a male and a female, unsurprisingly, and so the female is Lara from Meetic, and so Lara from Meetic is your digital dating assistant, and they actually gave her a personality, and it's actually so well done that it converts to fully paid subscription, like end-to-end, 30% higher than their own app. And just because people get attached to that character, and they make it clear it's a virtual character, it's like an AI, and they did a great job. So a couple of ideas here and there.
So are there categories that you'd recommend putting your entrepreneur hat on? Are there categories where you'd say, if you tap into the Messenger platform, it's going to help you as a startup versus other categories you'd say, you know what, still not there, I don't know, enterprise versus consumer?
Yeah. No, so on the enterprise side of things, there's like tons of opportunity, right? Because we have a platform, you've got 1 billion people on the other side that are all pushable, and you've got all of the brands in the world that are trying to build the right experience, and they don't have the capability inside of their companies to actually build that. But they all want it. And so there's a huge opportunity to build capabilities for larger companies to actually have a presence inside of messaging app and of course more specifically Messenger because it's the biggest platform to develop for. But that's a big opportunity, and we're seeing companies like ChatFuel and Conversocial and others that are either on the very simple end of the spectrum, like script a bot in 2 seconds and go, or you see Salesforce on the other side of the spectrum integrating Messenger inside of most of their business processes so that companies can actually interact with their customers, and that's integrated with their CRM, et cetera. So enterprise side has a ton of opportunity. On the consumer side, I think the real question is really to ask yourselves, is whatever you're building on the consumer side of things going to push people to download an app or not, right? Is it going to be good enough to have people download an app? And in most cases, the answer is no. Like the vast majority of people don't download new apps anymore, and if it doesn't land on the first or second screen of your smartphone, you can bet that people won't download it, right? And so Messenger becomes a way for you to reach a lot of people and get distribution for your interaction, and maybe eventually get them to download an app later if you want to, but you have the shot at doing that.
Great way of putting it. Like if you think people are not going to download your app, this is a great alternative channel. Before the next question, how many of you use WhatsApp?
Of course, it's an Israeli crowd.
Leave your hands up. How many of the ones that use WhatsApp also use Messenger? David, I think it's time to explain why we have to ask. I remember remember you saying, I believe in an interview or a couple of years ago, it was very distinct. WhatsApp was separate from Facebook, and Messenger was very tied to Facebook. WhatsApp was Europe, and Messenger was North America, but I think things are kind of different now. So I've heard several times,
Yeah.
one day Facebook will decide that it needs to be one.
So actually, it's still very different. So if you go to Israel, everybody uses WhatsApp, no one uses Messenger. If you go to the US, everybody uses Messenger, no one uses WhatsApp. If you go to Western Europe, it's more mixed. UK, France, Nordics, Central Europe is all Messenger. Germany, Spain, Italy is WhatsApp. India, Latin America is WhatsApp, and Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam is Messenger. So there are different countries, and generally the rule of thumb is that the countries where you had a high cost per SMS, so you paid like 15, 20 cents per text messages that you were sending, and suddenly you had a free alternative over Wi-Fi and much cheaper alternative over data, those are now WhatsApp markets. And countries where you already had an unlimited bundle of SMS are now more Messenger countries. So there's no point in merging those apps because there are very few countries, and there are actually none. And WhatsApp is a phone number graph. Messenger is a real identity graph, which is really interesting because, like, if you think of telecoms, if we were to start telecommunications today, would we give phone numbers to people? Probably not, right? It's this bizarre, set of numbers that's associated to you. It's like, you have name tags today. It doesn't have a phone number on it. It's got your name. And that's what Messenger is today. And, if you are, replacement to an existing infrastructure thing that has a high cost per unit, then it's easier to do it with a phone number graph because you don't have to retrain behaviors. It's harder if you're doing it with a new graph, but like over long term, we feel that it's going to be a good thing, especially when you have identity to interact with services and companies. So no merging. No merging. It pains me because every time, I would love to.
How many times were you asked about this?
A lot.
It's only 2.5 years, so still have a lot of opportunity. By the way, coming back to the previous stuff, is there a bot you wish someone built? Or, in other words, is there a startup idea you have that we should... No, just... because you see all these 34,000, you said, is there an area that is untapped that I can go and run and fund it?
There are some interesting startups that are worth mentioning that have an app and that have extended their distribution for things that are unexpected on Messenger. So Icon 8 is an app that does like style transfer type of photo post-processing. And they have a bot. And so you can go to Icon 8 and on Messenger and send them photos from the native camera, from your camera roll, and you choose the style, and in a second you get a photo back that's just completely reworked with the style you picked.
Is people behind it, or it's...
No, it's 100% automated, and it's pretty cool. And so like visual effects, all kinds of different things like that are really interesting. And the one thing that's worth saying is that, until recently, we didn't have any good ways for bots and bot developers and all kinds of different companies that built experiences inside of Messenger to drive massive amounts of traffic to their experience. And that's because, and that was an interesting thing with the team, because the team is like, oh, we need discovery. And I'm like, yeah, let's get good use cases and then we'll build discovery. No point building roads to bad places. And we get to the point where now we have enough really good experiences that we've enabled newsfeed ads that lead to straight to Messenger conversations. So it's really easy to get massive traffic. And we're going to continue investing in discovery. So as we ramp up discovery, we'll ramp up organic traffic to really good experiences. So there's a window of opportunity in the next, say, 12, 18 months where it's still early, where I think there are lots of opportunities.
It's like the early days of the App Store.
Definitely early days. Yeah.
Another interesting thought is this whole Snapchat thing, because I don't quite get it. But
You're too old.
Exactly. I think once you're 17, you're too old. But I see my daughter living in it. When I ask her, and she's almost 15. When I ask her, she lives there, and it almost and she also has Messenger.
Well, my son is right here. He lives there
He
too.
lives there too. Okay. If he lives there, then we can all live there. No, but it feels to me like there is something there that one, maybe older people don't understand. But two, it's become in some respects the Facebook and Messenger and Instagram of a generation that is, I don't know, 18 and younger. Is this a real threat? Like,
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. So, first of all, but that generation, and Ethan can keep me honest here, still uses Snapchat and Instagram and occasionally Facebook. And that's okay, right? Because generally they, go off of high school onto college, and that behavior slowly changes, but we don't know because like Snapchat is young, right? But I feel that like, look, the interesting thing is that like what's really interesting actually is maybe talking about the differences in how the different types of companies are run, because it's really interesting to think about like the way Snapchat builds product is actually very much with a Hollywood lens. So it's actually curated, it's very much a production, it's not data-centric, and it's like, this is the experience that we believe kids want, and kids turn out to want that experience. And it's really great because they've depressurized sharing as well. Like there's no pressure of quality of content. And so the frequency is really great. And so we think it has one use case. And the interesting thing, though, is that kids still use traditional messaging on top of it, right? And generally, if they're on iPhone, to my painful realization, they still use mostly iMessage, right? So they still have iMessage as a transactional thing. Snapchat is a more visual thing. Instagram as a more like, let's see what public figures do and other friends, but only beautiful things. Although with Instagram stories, this is changing really quickly. And so it's not a clear-cut answer. I feel that it's the time is fragmented, but at the same time, it's additive. I mean, the crazy thing to think about is that the average American still spends 4 hours a day watching TV. And that's all the time that will be transferred to other stuff. And by the way, if you think about it for a second, if you think about 4 hours spent watching TV on average, that means that there are a bunch of people watching 10 hours of TV a day, which is crazy. Anyway, well, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, seriously. So,
even 4 is a lot.
4 is crazy. No, so the point is there's still a lot of time spent doing things for entertainment purposes that are not spent on digital, and that time is going away. Maybe it's going to take a decade, but that time's going away. Linear is just going to move to more on-demand stuff, and it's going to move to other types of platforms. And so as a result, I think that it's great that different types of audiences and on different types of demographics have access to different tools.
Great. So, a couple of questions about entrepreneurship, but before that,
can you guys hear at the end over there, or yeah, yes, no? Should I repeat the questions? I'm just being practical here.
Practical, yeah, for the camera. It's going to be very brief. So I know personally that you're very involved with Israel, and the startup scene in Israel, and Icon is pretty much very much about that. I'm just debating: is this an open question or do I target this? But tell me more about how and what and why. And you're very outspoken about Israel too. So,
yeah. Well, there's a subjective part and an objective part. I'm answering to the specific Israel startup scene question. The subjective part is, of course, it's the part of the heart. Like my dad is Israeli. I grew up going to Israel every 3 months during like almost all of my childhood. And so I have strong roots, friends, and all kinds of different good reasons from the subjective part to be involved. And there's the purely objective part, which is that Israel has created some of the world's greatest entrepreneurs and successes, and that the trend is accelerating. It's not going the other way. And what I found really interesting in the last 5 years, actually, not in the last 10 years, is the shift, the massive shift that I've seen from companies that were built with very, very high technology advantages, but like not great marketing skills, and never consumer companies that came to the market. I remember every year I used to go to the Mobile World Congress, and I was invited to go visit the Israeli pavilion and went to meet startups and spent a considerable amount of time with them. And like systematically, those companies were selling to telcos, and they had great consumer products. And I was like, why do you do that? Like, just go consumer straight. Like, go to the end customer. And they were like, no, it's complicated. Like, we don't want to go through, like, we don't have money for marketing, and, we're not very good at it, for those who are self-conscious. And now it's changed completely. In the last 5 years, like, we've got lots of successes. Like, Waze is a good one that we keep on talking about. But there's so many good successes out there. And even if it's enterprise, I feel that more and more companies in Israel, instead of going through third parties to sell their solutions, they're establishing a foothold in the US, they're marketing more, and so I think the next 10 years are going to be the golden age of Israeli startups and entrepreneurs. So I'm invested in it.
Great. So I want to open it up for a few questions, but there is the traditional question in every panel in the Silicon Valley. You ask at the end, any advice for the entrepreneurs in the room? If you had like one advice, because you sold companies, you were an exec, you bought companies, and maybe something practical.
Well, two things that are practical. One is kind of like the usual thing, which is like, do the thing that you're absolutely passionate about, and you need to have passion to fixing a problem. If it just happens to be an opportunity, then business opportunity, and you just are opportunistic, generally it doesn't work that well, because you have to go through the highs and lows, and the valleys are pretty low when you start up a company, and generally you don't go to the other side if you don't have true passion and the energy that passion drives. So that's number one. Number two is obviously also the obvious one, which is spend a considerable amount of time vetting and choosing the people who join your organization. That, at the end of the day, is the true north of success, is building a phenomenal team that have and share the same passion you have for the problem that you're trying to fix, and that will go through the, again, low valleys with you when those present themselves. And that's, those are the two best pieces of advice I can give to any entrepreneurs.
I will agree with both of them very much. So let's open it up for questions. Please.
Hi, my name is Bart. I have a question. Today people do everything on Facebook. When you want to see what's up with your friends, you go on Facebook. When you want to interact with them,
it's hard to hear.
When you want to interact with your friends, you go on Facebook. When you want to have read the news, you go on Facebook. When you want to check some information about a brand, you go on Facebook. Basically, Facebook, in a lot of senses, has become the web, right? But one thing that escapes me is that when I want to buy something, Facebook kicks me out into the hands of Google, and then I search for something, and I go to Amazon or eBay and buy it. How come Facebook doesn't close the loop and provide a platform to create an e-commerce experience inside Facebook, so then when I want to buy something, I can do it inside Facebook as well? That's my question.
Okay. So a couple of things. I mean, first of all, like there have been a bunch of experiences that have been pushed by different teams, whether it's like the ability to buy things on pages, etc. And there's a current, marketplace product that we talked about recently, which is like C2C marketplace, like in person, right? So I feel that, so a couple of things. Like, first of all, if you think about intents and intent completion, and I just want to elevate for a second. Like, in the era of web, everything used to go to Google, right? Because you would search for the product you want, find the product results, and you would go and buy. In the era of mobile, things have changed quite a bit, because if you look at the intents you've got, like for the main intents, you have an app for it. So actually, if you search for any of the common products, you tend to go to the Amazon app. You don't even search on Google anymore. If you want a limo, you go to Uber. You don't search for a limo on Google anymore. You used to do that in the web era. And so those clear intent types of experiences have a place already in brands that can deliver a really good service end-to-end in the mobile era. And Facebook is great at not intent completion yet, but at intent creation. And that's what Newsfeed is about. I think it's one of the best intent creation surfaces in the world. You're there, you're waiting in line, you're at the dentist office, you're like, killing 5 minutes, and then you come across a product that you may want and that you didn't know you wanted. And that's why 80+% of Facebook's revenues are actually mobile versus web. And now comes a phase where maybe we can add a layer for that intent to complete. The intent that you discovered on Newsfeed, you may be able to complete in Messenger. And that's what we're doing more and more now. And you're seeing that now we have native payments in Messenger. You have the ability to rediscover a product that you discovered in Newsfeed that we're testing right now, and the ability to complete that purchase. So we're doing more and more to reduce the friction and to enable you to complete that intent without leaving the Facebook ecosystem of apps. Now, onto a full-on discovery of products inside of Facebook and all of these things. I think it's a step-by-step approach. And people don't traditionally come to Facebook for these things. We have a starting marketplace for C2C items where you can discover the products, but it's face-to-face commerce because we need to build trust and safety and all of these good things that a good marketplace need. So not right now, but there's a lot of work that's happening on the fringe to make commerce happen more frequently on Facebook and more easily. So the question is about M. Yeah. So who knows what M is here? Okay, cool. So M is a digital assistant that we started rolling out at a small scale in order to teach AI how to understand natural language, intent from natural language, and respond to it. And so M is alive and well. It is a toddler right now. And so, the technology we use to do that is really interesting because we basically take questions from about 10,000 plus people who are participating in this experiment, and in order to actually fulfill that intent, we try to automate the responses, and when M cannot respond, humans jump in and try to respond on its behalf. M looks and learns, and then it responds next time with the oversight of human trainers that can actually see whether the AI is doing the right thing or the wrong thing and guide it until it learns to do the thing fully. And we've made a lot of progress, actually. In the last 18 months or so, we've made a lot of progress with this product. I mean, it's not a product, it's an experiment. And gradually, this is actually to your question on Wit.ai, which is an acquisition I made earlier on when I joined Facebook. We've built that bot engine that all of you can use to extract intent from natural language. And a lot of the learnings from that AI instance that enables you to build natural language understanding comes from the M experiment. And then gradually we'll figure out ways to actually bring parts of what M is really good at inside of the product to a wider audience, and that's still work in progress. Yes?
I'm not sure everybody can hear me, but I'll try to speak loud. Thanks for the insights. Before I ask the question, I just want to let everybody know here, I am Chinese. And being Chinese, in many ways, it sucks. You have to get a visa to go to most countries, probably except for North Korea. And we can't vote. But there's one thing good that being Chinese, we do have WeChat. And it makes life so easy. My 74-year-old mother uses WeChat to consume content, connect with family and friends, and do commerce and shop. How long do you think that we, people in the US and internationally outside of China, can have the same experience through Messenger? And second question is, what are the key things that Facebook would have to do, and what are the things that ecosystem would have to change to support that experience? and maybe a better experience?
That's a great question. Well, that's what we're hard at work trying to do for the things that are relevant. And a good example is like an integration that we have in Messenger, which is Uber and Lyft. And Didi has an integration into WeChat in China. And it's a very different thing, right? Because like most people who use Uber, actually 100% of the people who use Uber have the Uber app, right? So when you actually land at an airport, you're definitely going to use the Uber app. You're not going to order an Uber through Messenger. It doesn't make any sense. But if you and I are in a conversation and we're supposed to meet somewhere, you send me an address and I can tap on that thing and get an Uber and you can get an ETA automatically updated in that thread, then it makes sense for me to use it in Messenger. So I think the markets are not comparable, but like more and more things are being built in Messenger. And you asked the really good question about the prerequisites of the ecosystem. That's why we went so fast to try to open up the platform in April at F8, and since then have been iterating and adding capabilities, because what we want is that ecosystem to be built so that all of the companies that are the incumbents that don't have the capability of actually building or extending their current experiences to Messenger can actually rely on those third parties to do that. And now we have a thriving ecosystem of partners that are enabling those things to happen. And the number of conversations that are started and live every day with entities that are built by those parties is actually really growing quickly. So I still think it's going to take a couple of years because you've got a bunch of legacy systems and all kinds of different things that need to adapt. But gradually, we're actually more and more optimistic that you can do more and more things inside of Messenger, and that over time, the things that are relevant for you to do in a messaging app will happen in Messenger.
Maybe we'll take one more question.
All right. Yes.
So what's your long-term vision for Messenger? And when we look at email, maybe the most powerful tool that we have, it looks like 20 years ago, doesn't really change a lot. Do you have plans to attack the email, the Gmail?
I think he needs to answer that question. So, I mean, a couple of things. Like, so on the vision of Messenger over the long run, the first thing is I believe that if we're successful, Messenger will be a more central part of your life than it is today. Today, you use it to communicate with your friends and your loved ones, if you're not in Israel. And gradually, more and more, you use it to interact with services, with businesses. You use it for customer support and all the way to full-on services. And we expect that to increase. The intensity of those interactions will increase over time, and you will come to Messenger to run your life, basically. So that's the longer-term vision. Now, on to the other part of the question. I feel that, how to say that? It takes time to get all of that working, right? And so you need to get all of those things onto a system that is currently not universal, unlike email. And once those things transition, then the things that are most relevant for you to do in a more synchronous way will happen over Messenger than versus over email. Email has a lot of issues. So email, first of all, and the biggest issue is actually the fact that it's not one canonical thread with each of the entities that you actually interact with. So every time I interact with a company over email, I need to re-identify myself. I need to give them my customer number. I need to tell them why I'm calling, why I'm emailing. Like the example of the airline that I gave earlier, if you have to email a customer support of an airline for a reservation that you already made with that airline, and for a reference that they sent you over email, you have to actually send them an email and send them your name, your reference number, your frequent flyer number, the flight you're going to go board, because they don't have any context of who you are and why you're calling. And that's because the threads are not canonical. And by the way, most emails that are sent by companies come from no reply at. And that's pretty messed up. Like, you have the right to send me an email, I don't have a right to respond to you. Like, why? So I feel that Messenger is a much better place to do all of these things, and gradually what we're seeing is like they're good examples. So Rogers in Canada, Sprint in the US, Globe in the Philippines are now providing customer support over Messenger instead of all of the other channels. In Canada, Rogers has increased customer satisfaction by 60%, and if you're a telco, that's probably the best thing that happened to you that year. Like, I'm not kidding. It's like 60% increase in CSAT, that's crazy. Globe Telecom in the Philippines are now providing customer support over Messenger, and they've been able to leverage a startup that's providing an AI layer that automates some of the responses. 75% decrease in cost of servicing clients, increased customer satisfaction. So we think that for those types of interactions, Messenger will be much better than email. And it's just a question of how long will it take for the whole ecosystem to be built around a new form of interaction. But I don't think it's going to take a decade. I think it's just a matter of a couple of years. Big opportunity for startups, though. I love a different kind of email, maybe.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.